I'm a 32-year-old man who's been married to my wife, who is 30 years old, for 5 years. Lately, I've noticed a significant change in her behavior, to the point where she feels like a complete stranger. When we first met, we both had established lives, and it seemed like we shared the same values. However, over the past year, something has shifted. When we got together, I pursued a technical education through trade school. Initially, I had to work low-level jobs that didn't reflect my skills and abilities. However, I persevered and gradually established a reputation in coding that surpassed the significance of my formal education. This led to a sense of pride and accomplishment. On the other hand, my wife had obtained a graduate degree and held a management position in her career. This contrast between our professional backgrounds initially created what I believed was a healthy and friendly tension between us. In the past, I expressed my frustration regarding middle management. I viewed them as obstacles standing in the way of completing tasks efficiently. However, my wife held a different perspective, recognizing the importance of middle management in directing personnel and allocating resources effectively. Personally, I had the misfortune of encountering a series of unsatisfactory middle managers who regarded code developers as easily replaceable components. They imposed impractical deadlines, made promises to clients without consulting the development team, and allowed project requirements to expand uncontrollably, leading to scope creep. Whenever I vented to her about the foolish decisions my manager made, she consistently defended him, despite never having met him. "He has insights you may not be aware of," she would say. After dating for approximately a year, I realized that discussing my workday with her, unless it concerned time off or salary increases, was fruitless. I often sensed that she harbored resentment towards me for not pursuing a 4-year or graduate degree. She brought it up persistently in the early stages of our relationship, but once I explained the financial burden of student loans and debt, she let the matter go. Both of us entered our marriage with minimal debt, and our earning potentials were quite comparable. Around 2 years ago, I joined a company where the owner personally engaged with me. He recognized my worth and potential, leading to a significant increase in my salary. Currently, I earn 50% more than my wife. Moreover, I have a manager who not only collaborates effectively with me, but also embodies the ideal qualities of a Scrum Master. While he may not be a technical lead, he knows how to support and guide without creating an adversarial atmosphere. I genuinely appreciate him as a supervisor. The initial 4 years of our marriage were wonderful. All things considered, I refrained from venting about work-related manager issues, and she no longer insisted on me investing thousands of dollars into obtaining a degree and accumulating debt. During this period, we enjoyed ourselves by frequently going on date nights, sharing hobbies, cooking together, reading books together, and watching movies together. When the initial lockdown was imposed, both of us began working from home. Fortunately, our house was spacious, equipped with 3 spare bedrooms that we had intended to use for future children. One of the bedrooms had already been converted into my office, and when the lockdown began, we transformed the second bedroom into a workspace for my wife. Although we both telecommuted, we held different philosophies regarding our approach to remote work. In the mornings, I followed a routine of getting up, preparing breakfast, showering, shaving, and dressing in a suit before entering my home office. I must admit, I harbor a dislike for suits and ties. However, donning them did help me mentally shift into a work mode mindset. In contrast, my wife follows a more relaxed approach. After rolling out of bed, she has breakfast, brushes her teeth, and puts on a t-shirt and sweatpants. And with her iPad in hand, she heads to her office, occasionally playing Candy Crush between responding to emails. I suppose I perceive it as work from home, whereas she views it as work from AOME. Nevertheless, I digress. It's fascinating how physical proximity can sometimes create emotional distance. Throughout the day, my wife has multiple meetings, and I can easily tell because she keeps her office door wide open, allowing me to overhear them. On the other hand, I have only one daily meeting, a brief SSQRUM, and for that, I prefer to close my office door. 5 months ago, my wife expressed feeling insulted by my decision to close the door during the daily scurry-up. I tried explaining that it was for creating a peaceful environment and maintaining focus on my work. She expressed her suspicion that I was concealing something, indicating a lack of trust. Despite my efforts to engage in our shared hobbies, She dismissed them by saying, "We already spend the whole day together as it is." That's in hindsight. I should have probed further into her concerns, but I failed to do so. I treated the lockdown as a temporary situation, perhaps mistakenly. The situation worsened significantly when her company implemented a partial reopening of the office. She eagerly seized the opportunity to join the 50 of employees allowed back into the rearranged office space to comply with social distancing measures. I don't hold it against her. I also yearn for the office environment. However, my own company is yet to reopen its offices. And as long as I have access to my development environment, physical presence at the office seems unnecessary. I believe several of her colleagues influenced her mindset. I persisted in trying to understand what was going on, but she became secretive and guarded. As time went on, she grew increasingly distant. It felt as though I had a roommate rather than a wife. Then last month on a weekend, she placed her old iPad on the desk and casually asked, "Can you erase this? I want to give it to my niece as a gift." I shrugged it off since I often performed such tasks for our family and didn't think much of it. She headed out to another supposed company gathering, and I switched on the iPad. Perhaps my wife had grown so audacious that she believed I wouldn't bother checking the old iPad and would simply perform a factory reset. Regardless, I couldn't resist the urge to investigate, and upon doing so, I stumbled upon her messaging application. It's there. I found pictures, videos, and instant messages exchanged between her and her boss. They'd been engaging in an affair for 2 months. The sensation coursing through my veins is indescribable. It was as though my blood had turned to ice. The scene reminded me of a moment in the movie Equilibrium, when the polygraph's readings flatlined. I'd made copies of everything, storing them in my cloud storage reserved for development projects, separate from work. Simultaneously, I began seeking the assistance of a lawyer. Initially, I refrained from confronting her because I was unsure of how I would handle the situation. A peculiar sensation overcame me, as if I were simultaneously numb and wading through water. She seemed oblivious or indifferent to it all. By that time, our intimacy had evaporated, and we had essentially entered the realm of being roommates. I reached out to a lawyer who advised me to continue investigating discreetly while maintaining silence. He recommended hiring a skilled private investigator whose services I promptly enlisted. Over the course of the next 4 weeks, we diligently gathered evidence, while my lawyer diligently prepared the necessary documents for filing a divorce. "Stay patient," my lawyer continuously advised, taking advantage of the coldness coursing through my veins and her apparent indifference. Just yesterday, my lawyer informed me that the divorce filing was almost complete. In our state, fault needed to be proven. And thanks to the private investigator's thorough work, we had acquired photos, videos, and incriminating text messages. A solid case. It seemed like a sure victory, but then last night, something within me snapped. The icy numbness transformed into an overwhelming surge of fiery emotions. She arrived home as expected but late, and the details of our conversation elude me. However, I erupted in a fit of anger. I unleashed the bitter words, expressing my hope that her affair with her boss had been worth it. In response, she unleashed a wave of cruelty, malice, and vindictiveness. She accused me of failing to provide emotional support, claiming that I spent my days lounging around at home, despite the fact that I was the primary earner. She even went as far as saying that I didn't stimulate her intellectually, despite the technical nature of my job. When I mentioned having a lawyer, she burst into laughter, mocking my supposed bluff. According to her, there was no way I would leave her. She asserted confidently that even if we divorced, she would be entitled to half of my paycheck. She callously suggested that staying with her would at least grant me occasional sexual intimacy, implying that I shouldn't risk jeopardizing that. It was as if she had transformed into an entirely different person. I expressed my disapproval to her, stating that does not qualify as a marriage. In response, she chuckled once more, remarking, "Sweetheart, it's the 21st century. A woman can have both her cake and eat it too." With another laughter, she retreated to bed. Meanwhile, I composed an email to my boss, requesting a week off to attend to a pressing family matter. As expected, my boss approved the request without hesitation. I spent the night on the office couch, trying to find some rest. This morning, as I was getting dressed, she departed without much ado, leaving me with a curt farewell. "Don't bother waiting up." I visited my lawyer's office, where he informed me that he had prepared the necessary documents. Accompanying him was a process server, and he inquired about my preference for the method of serving the papers. I conveyed my desired approach to him. My lawyer, displaying his good-natured nature, chuckled and cautioned me, saying, "You really shouldn't. I've had numerous clients who wanted to opt for a clever or retaliatory serving method, but I always dissuade them. Wretches, you see, lack a sense of humor." He explained to me the potential consequences of such actions, including the risk of losing alimony or assets. However, I remained indifferent to these concerns. Her hurtful words had deeply affected me, feeling a desire for retaliation. Despite my lawyer's persistent advice against it, he eventually relented upon witnessing the determination in my eyes. As I shared my plan with the process server, he too found amusement in my scheme and chuckled, declaring, "To my hero, I had to make a special order, incurring additional rush costs. I dispatched the process server to collect the item and deliver it, along with the legal papers, directly to my wife's workplace." The process server later recounted the events that unfolded after he completed his task. According to him, he had no choice but to go through with it. Just arriving at my wife's office, he spotted her engaged in lively conversation and laughter with a gathering of colleagues and friends. Politely approaching her, he inquired about her name to ensure he had the correct person. While confirming her identity, she curiously inquired about the purpose of his visit. With a deliberate gesture, he placed the sizable box on a nearby desk and proceeded to open it. But to everyone's surprise, it revealed a cake that boasted a custom image printed on its surface using frosting. It was a revelation to me, as I had no prior knowledge of such a confectionery technique until this very morning. The image was an image of my wife and her boss in an embrace clothed, but obvious what they were doing with the words, "Here's your cake. Eat it." Dipped in icing above the image, process server put the papers next to the cake box on the table. "You've been served." He said what happened next was a loud screech from her. At least 8 people in the office saw the cake. My wife freaked and swatted the large cake box off the table where it fell on the carpet. But with the image still visible, several of her coworkers started berating, and she started crying and screaming. The process server took a hasty retreat. My phone blew up, and I just kept sending her to voicemail. I don't bother reading her texts. She hasn't come home, but her mother texted me saying she is going to stay over there for now. The euphoric rush of the cake felt great, but as the hours pass, I am considering my lawyer's words now. Did I mess this up? Thank you for listening to the story to the end, and if you like it, please support us with a like, as well as subscribe to our channel. So write in the comments what you think about this story.